efficient shape. It's the strongest shape that you can make. A circle is the strongest structure that holds the most volume of whatever you're going to put in it. If that makes sense, that's how I see it. Is that the wings can't hold fuel, so they have to be able to move, so they can't. So once you do that, then what shape should be, which is the same as every other rocket, which is a cylinder. So.
Yeah, this is more or less like recovering the external tank to the space shuttle. It's not like recovering the shuttle itself, if that makes sense. The external tank held the actual fuel. The shuttle was a cargo bay and a crew cabin that it was never meant to hold a large amount of fuel. You had the pods in the back that held propellants for the orbital maneuvering system, but they're two completely different vehicles. Starship is much like it's iterating on what the shuttle did, but it's nowhere near what the actual shuttle was, if that makes sense.
Lab, by the way, takes his crow medium rare because he doesn't need it, because it looks like we have stopping engine chill and reducing tank farm venting.
Oh, he's going to serve us plenty of crow.
Yep. Yep.
Me, the optimist. Oh, every time.
So we'll see. We'll see if they recycle and continue more. But yeah, definitely the engine chill has stopped or reduced, and so it looks like the farm venting has as well. So
yeah. So back to the questions and the previous question we just kind of were talking about with the surfaces and everything else. Jacob, let's see if I can pronounce this last name. Kanochli asks, have they tested the flap movement yet? And so, like, what do you guys think about the flaps and what you've seen of it? And let's go from there.
So they have tested some. We've seen them moving. Nothing crazy. No real high speed movement. Clearly, we don't know exactly how fast they can move or how fast they're designed to move. We've never seen both sets unhinged and working at the same time. For whatever reason, whenever they've tested them, they've done one set at a time, and then they'll restrap the other ones.
There's LOX venting.
There's LOX venting. Right now the bottom ones are open, though they are still strapped, which is interesting. They're more open than they normally are, but they're still strapped down, and the tops are completely strapped down. So it's kind of interesting how they've done that separately, but is it never together, never having all four, doing simultaneous movements. Don't know why.
We have a detanking vent. Long sustained vent.
Oh, there's the methane one as well.
Yep.
So that's the normal sign of a detanking process. So as far as the flaps, one thing I'd love to add into this is that yes, they are aerodynamic surfaces. They act sort of like brakes, but they also control the yaw, the pitch, and what else? Even actually, something else. Yaw, pitch, and even roll. Yeah,
roll.
So the roll is the big one.
I said roll. Yep.
Yeah, the roll is the big one that it already automatically does. The way that the flaps are aimed kind of in a triangle fashion already controls the roll by saying there is no roll. This is the best way to go, at least theoretically. The wind tunnel tests, simulations show that. Reality might be a little bit different on that. But one thing that I've heard, it was a military aircraft. It's like a KC-130 Galaxy or something else. I'm wrong on the plane, I know that. But it actually has the only system that is similar, and it's on the fin in the back of the Delta Wing or whatever you call it. It opens up and flares, and that's the closest thing that we have to anything even close to what Starship is doing with its flaps. So that's kind of one of these big, wow, there's nothing else out there. They have some folding wings that they're looking into for other systems that use heat and heat pipes to just fold the wing in and out to make it more stable. And that's why you see on aircraft that wingtip bent towards the aircraft. It actually makes it more stable. So it goes like 90 degrees up. And they have some testing that they're doing with small aircraft with Boeing and some other places that are just large, I guess you call them RC airplanes that they're testing with. But nothing else out there is even close to what Starship is doing with those flaps and aerodynamic surfaces. So the next question we have is from Jults. They ask, how long will the static fire be?
We are unsure if we're even going to have a static fire tonight. I don't believe we've gotten notice for it. If they have gotten a notice, Nomad and Mary have both been extremely quiet about it. But we do not believe there will be a static fire tonight.
And when there are, we've seen everything from 1 second pre-burner fires up to like 5-6 seconds, somewhere in that ballpark. They're usually somewhere between 2 and 5 seconds long. So
yeah, the longest one I've seen is 7 seconds. Shortest is about 2.5. That was the last one that blew the engine because it had Martite blow into the engine compartment, sever the connection, and the whole system shut down. But the other 2 engines shut down properly. But the third, nope, it did not.
Mistakes were made.
Yeah.
Andrian Moore asks, do you think they will undesign the control surfaces? I don't think they'll survive re-entry from deep space. So what are you guys' thoughts on if those control surfaces will be viable or not viable?
So we know that SpaceX is intending to send these starships to Mars, and these starships with these aero surfaces are specifically meant to re-enter from Mars. We believe that the current design iteration is close to what the final one will be, but they will need aero surfaces to land on Mars, and then when they also bring the crew back, they will be on the same vehicle coming back to Earth and re-entering from Earth. So the stainless steel actually, it could very well survive a LEO re-entry. It'd be very rough, but the heat tiles are actually supposed to help with that lunar rated re-entry. That's what it's more akin to, is the velocities that you would experience coming back from out at the moon.
If they quote unquote undesign them and remove them from the design of Starship, SpaceX has spent millions and millions and millions of dollars. I know we've before mentioned like the estimates of what they've spent total on the Starship program. That would be an insane step backwards when every single rendering we've seen has had a control surface, for Starship of some kind. I don't see them being removed. I have to believe that they have done enough research, and clearly there's some more research to do about heat dissipation, heat tiles, active cooling, all those things to deal with them, as well as just the sheer strength that they will need to not fold like accordions on on an orbital reentry. A lot of that has to do with angle of attack. If they're able to change the angle of attack and put less stress on the control surfaces and more on the body of Starship, that will help a lot. If they can bleed off speed, by putting more stress on the body and less on the control surfaces, that'll help. Clearly, we'll find out, right? Elon's saying he wants one going to Mars in 3 years or whatever it is. We'll do a lot of orbital flights before that and a lot of reentries, and they'll see, does it work? Will they get to a point where they say, like some other things that they've tried, where they say, we've tried enough, this is not going to work, we have to redesign? But I think they will do a lot of testing before that. They will exhaust all efforts to make these work before they would completely redesign them and have fixed wings or whatever else they would do to do it. But like Falcon said, they're designed for lunar and more specifically Martian reentry, which has way less dense atmosphere, where they're much more likely to be able to withstand that. So if they can withstand Earth, then they could absolutely withstand Mars. That's what I got, Thomas. You got anything else?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking the same thing. The biggest problems for it is the reentry on Earth. Earth is, if you can't survive that, Mars is easier on the reentry because there's less. You do get heat, lots of heat, but there's less problems on Mars side than there is for Earth. There's plenty of heat to go around for Earth. The thick upper atmosphere, sodium layer, all these other layers that you are dealing with, versus Mars, just a lot of CO2. CO2 does a lot of heat damage to a vehicle. That's why you do need the heat shield tiles for Mars. But the heat amount, I don't think it's nearly as much as on Earth. And that's going to be the biggest problem and the biggest hurdle. It's like it's basically like the airplane. The biggest issues you have are on landing and takeoff. After that, you're pretty much good to go. There's usually never any issues. It's just those two places where you have the highest chance of incidents, small to large. But you know, the airline industry over the decades, the centuries that it's been around, has become so safe that it is safer than driving. Like statistically, you're safer to fly long distances than you are to drive long distances, or even going to the airport. You're more at risk of getting into a collision than you are on the plane going and taking off and all those things. So we are going to see some interesting things happen with reusability, and it's going to be mostly trying to get that re-entry part done, and that's going to be probably the biggest hurdle. That and the next step right here, right now, is the SN8's kickflip maneuver that for the crazy Elon. Nobody else has done anything like this or even attempted anything like this. SpaceX is the first.
So we had a $5 donation from Tesla versus the World, who had a question of, how difficult will orbital refueling be? Can you explain the process? Thank you for the content. Thank you very much for the $5. Thank you, or Tesla versus the World. How difficult will orbital refueling be? Incredibly. Kind of what Thomas was just talking about. It's never been done, especially, you know, there's been proposals for doing it for satellites and refueling satellites in orbit, but to the scale that they're talking about doing it is insane. The logistics that'll be needed to be figured out for connecting the two, for the couplers, for transferring fuel, not just transferring it, but transferring it in a fast enough and efficient enough manner that it makes it worthwhile. You know, they can't go up there and say, oh, it's going to take 6 weeks to transfer fuel from one to the other. You know, it'll have to be a very efficient process, whether they're using, you know, centrifugal force essentially, or pressure, whatever it is. But for a really quick and dirty explanation, the two starships, or, you know, Starship would be launched. It would be put into orbit. Another Starship would be launched after it. Basically a fuel tank variant of Starship. When they're both in orbit, they will be put in the same orbit. They will meet up together. They'll basically be oriented kind of butt to butt or engine to engine, and there would be couplers that would connect the two starships. So they'll basically be connected, you know, engine facing engine, and then they can pump fuel from the fuel tank variant essentially into the Starship. I think it takes 6 or 8 of these refuelings to completely refill back up the original Starship. So, you know, it takes whatever 7 or 8 launches to refill a Starship. Once that Starship is full, it can now continue onto wherever it was going, to the moon, to Mars, or, you know, whatever its final destination may be. But there is a whole lot of things to figure out, you know, before that to make that work. SpaceX has received funding from NASA to help with that, to help develop that technology, which helps. You know, I think it was only, is it 15 or 50 million? I forgot how much it was. You know, so not an insane amount, but the fact that they're, you know, looking for that obviously helps. NASA wants to be able to do that as well, because it is critical to any future flights. You know, any flights going to the moon or Mars, to have as much fuel as possible on that ship.
I think it was 5 million is the first one that they got for just in situ refueling, or something like that. That they were basically just to do a study on, then they're paid like another 50 million to actually try to attempt it or give some sort of demonstration of it as far as the capability. And there'll probably be other contracts for similar things in the future for other parts. And it's just a little bit of change for SpaceX to play around with. It's not a whole significant amount. Starship itself is estimated to cost, by Elon's standards, $10 billion for the whole program. And right now they are about almost $6 billion into it. So it's kind of going through money a bit quick, but that's for the whole program. Everything, all of the fuel farm, all of the employees in Boca Chica to Hawthorne to like the Raptor development, that's going to be the biggest chunk. It's going to be probably a fifth of the cost or more is going to be in Raptors. So it will be kind of a long journey to go through for SpaceX to figure out exactly how to make the cost minimize, but the simple answer that they've come up with is mass production. More of these ships you can build, the more cargo you can get. And ooh, there's a lot of venting down at the bottom. Is that from the vehicle, or is that from? Oh, it's hard to tell.
That looks like from the condenser.
Yeah,
No,
it
that's
does
not
look
from
like
the
it's from the
vehicle.
condenser.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's not from Starship.
are we
So
going
they-
for a wet dress and then static?
So what it very well looks like they did at first is they only loaded locks onto the vehicle, or at least some locks onto the vehicle, because they didn't need to start up the CH4 recondenser if they weren't moving the methane to begin with. So they very well could have loaded the locks, verified that everything was good with the locks. Now they're starting to load liquid methane onto the vehicle as well.
Yeah, we
Does
still
that
have a
mean
little bit
lab
of
is
engine
wrong?
vent.
Does
No,
that mean
I mean-
lab? Lab said only wet dress. So if they're doing the condenser,
Or
maybe
less.
they're going to start, or
Well,
they're going to start
they've
loading.
used the condenser before for wet dress rehearsals and so on.
Yeah, so
But
he
they
can
didn't
still
do
be
it
right.
earlier.
If we don't see flames, then Lab's completely right. And we're eating crow tonight. Tasty crow.
Hey,
I'll
hey,
have it
I
on some
never
sandwich
I
with
never said
some
there was
cranberry jam and mayonnaise. Oh, good
No, I never said static. I said I'm here for the party. So
stuff.
whatever that may be. So
In my
It's a
opinion,
party
seems
either
like
way.
a red light flashing up against the vapor cloud that's coming from the recondenser.
Oh, I'm looking
check your
for
contacts.
something.
I'm looking at the high res stream, not the low res stream.
I
Alright.
got nothing.
I see a little bit of flicker of gas coming off to the right. Looks like from the actual black tank there. Yeah, there's just a little flash and puff.
I don't
Oh,
know.
that's so
I got
weird.
nothing.
Oh, I think it's just the lighting, the way it's hitting some vapor coming off the top left. There is a stream coming out of the looks like the conduits area. No, actually, that's just above it. That's the second, I guess you could call it nubbin. It's not the engine chill. It's something else above the engine chill. Or no, I've got that wrong. The engine chill is at the top. The vents and the holes are down below. That's what it is. Okay, that's coming from the skirt down below. Oh, sometimes Starship confuses me. I love it.
I think we're recycling. It looks like we're getting a little more venting from the bottom of Starship. It looks like the engine chill is slightly increased. You know, it kind of dropped down. Now there's getting a little bit more. We might be in luck. We'll see.
All right. So while we have a kind of a lull here, I'm going to go through and thank some donations and new members here. So new members. Let's see here. Doesn't say. Okay, that's one I already did. So let's go ahead and thank the donations. Foom for $5. Thank you for that. Then we have Jim Watari for $25. Well, thank you so much, Jim. Next up, we have new members, Terry Kesherin. Thank you for joining Lab Padre Gold. We've got Leah Sunderson. We have same person here. Then we have Martin Linden, and then WizKid. Thank you for the $2. And he says 6 miles from the pad. Ooh, Wiz is really close. I think that was when we were doing the check, and I think he gets it pretty close. I think Wiz would get it, because Lab's going to be a little bit further than that. He's just right at the very tip of South Padre Island. Let's see, we've got. Did I say Martin Linden already? And then we have the Sound of Resistance, and then Friday Ray for $5. Sound of Resistance was €5. And thank you for that, Ray. And he says Zen. I think he's talking to Zen Dragon. Was excited that she was in here.
Ray's moving up the world. $5 donations. He must have found a lot in the couch cushions.
Another drone flying by the top of the city. You can barely see it.
Oh, yep, there it goes by to the right. So yeah, thank you for everybody who's donated, and thank you for all the new members. Welcome to the green team. I'm still the gray area, but I'm in Discord as blue, so I'm still cool.
So, got a question from Paul Parker. Have they always put a strap on the bottom fins? Pretty much.
I guess the definition of always would be SN8's really the first vehicle we've seen with flight-worthy fins. Mark 1 was meant to fly, but it never did. But I don't believe Mark 1 had the straps. If I remember correctly. The fins were outwards, but then again, Mark 1 was a whole different beast compared to the vehicles we see today. But ever since SN8's been on the pad, they've had it strapped down and ratcheted down, basically.
Yeah, the only times the straps haven't been on it have been when they're doing testing, but that's been, relatively very few and far between. So, for the most part, yes, they have always been strapped down. And, I don't know if it was in here. Oh yeah, it was a completely related question. Are the flaps only extended on the left side, or is it the perspective fooling us? I think they're both even. They're both extended to the same amount, more than they normally are. They're both normally more folded in. So they're both strapped, but I think they are open wider than they typically have been. So I think so. Looks like
the bottom flaps are closer to what it would be for re-entry and the whole skydive maneuver that would be the crazy Elon. It's about what it would be right there. So they're actually equal as far as the distance apart, I think, and it's just rotated a little bit where it makes it look like the right one is not as extended out as the left one is. But that's just because we're looking at the left straight on, where the right one, it's more of an angle.
If you look at the vehicle, the center line is right along, or at least the center of the backside is right along where the cabling you see is. And as you can tell, the cabling is not directly in the center of the field of view for us. So the right flap, as Thomas was indicating, is pointed more towards us, and the left flap is pointed more away.
Yes. All right, chat, really quick. With a percentage, what do you think the odds are that we get a static fire tonight? We've got an hour and 7 minutes left in the window. So, from 0 to 100%, what percent do you guys think that we will get a static fire?
Oh, of course it's going to happen at 9:05.
0%.
That's irrelevant. 0? No.
0.
Where's your optimism? Where's your optimism?
Didn't get it noticed, though.
I don't care. Surprise everybody. Tell them Merry Christmas.
Surprise. Vroom, vroom, vroom. So, yeah, that notice, though. Oh,
we don't
that is a fun one. As long as they've gotten a notice, we're good, but we don't know if they've received one or not. And so far, I've got mixed signals on both directions on that one. So they could be,
be an
but
optimist,
I'm gonna be going for an optimist. Yeah, I think there's still a chance. There's always a chance. You're telling me there's a chance. All right. Let's see. The next question we have here was from Paul O'Connor. Since SN9 was built before SN8 was fully tested, how were design upgrades implemented without a full data set?
I think the same way they always are. You don't necessarily need data sets to improve a design. I think you could look at a design, and Elon is a very big fan of less parts So if you design something and then just through additional time, obviously, computer simulations, you say, you know what, we can do this exact same thing with less parts, with less material, can make design improvements without actually having any flight data for that. Clearly, they've done static fires, with SN8 before SN9 was done. Probably not going to get a lot of data that would be implementable into SN9 from that, but it's definitely possible. So I think we could see a lot of that. In changes to previous or subsequent or serial numbers that don't necessarily need flight data to make those improvements. Jolly Roger, thank you very much for the $50 donation. Awesome coverage. You are very welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, we did actually just miss a question here from looks like Russ Chadwell. This is a question we were debating earlier about. Has there ever been a rocket that has relit while falling through an atmosphere without using hypergolic fuels?
I don't think so. We were talking about this earlier, just the commentators, and New Glenn, a Jeff Hu, that one relights. It's not doing an orbital reentry though. It's barely passing the Kármán line and then reentering. And we were I think trying to look it up. We couldn't say for sure how those engines relight on that. But it's also not coming, from orbit. It's it's going up, barely crossing the Kármán line, and then relighting its engines on the way down. It might use hypergolics. We didn't look it up enough. Other than that, though, that would be the only other craft that's ever relit its engines. Every other orbital rocket has thrown away its boosters.
Or just gone up and down all in one engine burn. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. So, nothing else has ever needed to relight its engines because there was never an attempt to save anything. So, that's, I don't know of anything else that's ever relit its engines, especially, not using hypergolics to do it. So, Jeremiah Passmore, thank you very much for the $10 donation. That was awesome. And Little Rabbit, thank you very much for the $5.
And I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but I do have another question along those similar lines from Mr. Potato. Asks, Starship doesn't use T-Tab for Raptors, right?
No, it does not.
Correct. Yep.
There we go.
There you go. We don't need no hypergolics. Let's see. We got still the same. We're still condensers going like crazy. Fuel farms venting. Holy cow. But pretty much no engine chill. And it's getting frosty, but that's from the D tank, presumably. So
yeah,
D tank and retank. But very possible could be refilling. We'll see that as we start seeing. If we see the engine chill again, then for sure, they're refilling. Here's a question from Gunnar Graymond. How much heat is generated by triple Raptors, and what is the heat tolerance of Martite? That's a very good question. I don't know how much heat Martite can take.
That's above my pay grade.
So I'm just looking this up here.
Yeah, Google.
So Google, just a little Google, but I can only give you part of the answer if I can find it. Looking specifically for methane. Okay, so 950C, what it burns in air. So that's going to be a little bit different for just a pure oxygen, pure methane burn, because air is like what percent of air is like oxygen is 21, 20? Not even that, is it? Oh man, it's a little bit. It's a lot lower. It's 70% nitrogen, and then air makes up a smaller component of that. So you're looking at temperatures well above 1950 degrees C. the amount of heat you're pumping out with 3 Raptors with oxygen burning with the methane is going to be so stinking hot. The Martite, it does stand up pretty well to the heat, I think, but I don't think it stands up to all of the pounding it gets from the 3 Raptors, and that's where you get into a lot of trouble because the basically the concrete below it can't take the heat, it can't take the pounding, and it gets pulled up and flakes off in large chunks. We saw a video with Everyday Astronaut with a big chunk of it, and there's a lot of debris that's thrown off, and it's mostly the Martite, and it's the concrete that looks like it's failing. If there was some way to keep the Martite together, maybe through bonding it with some micro rebar or something, that might help, but you'd still just have chunks flying off because, as I said, that concrete below just can't handle it. It's the I think it's a silicone surface as well that Martite just does not adhere to so well. And
Psychonaut 421, thank you very much for the $10. Sweet nectar,
Roger,
fun
thank
times
you.
tonight. Fun times every night, sir. Fun times every night. Well, every night that we're here, I should say. Bad. All right, we got another question from where we at? From Mindy Matthew. Has the static fire been done yet with a relight using the header tanks? No, we have not had a relight static fire yet. So, and if Lab is correct, and it looks like most of the chat agreed that we're probably not going to get a static fire tonight, then we won't have it tonight either. If they don't do it tonight, I don't see them having another static fire before the hop. This was kind of the last hurrah, I think, for that. Tomorrow, I can see would be spent doing kind of, prepping the pad area, prepping everything. As Lab mentioned, all of SpaceX operations, all of Boca Chica Village will be evacuated for the hop. So there will be nobody for, several miles in any direction when they do the hop. So I would assume that tomorrow would be spent preparing for that, clearing out all equipment, anything that does not absolutely have to be at the pad area would be removed. And unfortunately, and very surprisingly, we would have never got a relight static fire, which I think pretty much everybody was expecting we would have seen that at some time, but never did.
Do you want to pull up the next question?
Sure. Got another question from Gary Peak, who's a new member. Thank you very much. How far away is the roadblock from the launch pad? First post, yeah. Welcome, Gary. So the roadblock is
5 miles?
Is it 3 miles? 5 miles? 3 miles?
I believe
there's
it's
2
5
roadblocks.
miles.
Well, let's say the Sentinel Cam roadblock, the main one.
Yeah, that's not even. That's about a mile down the road, ish.
Pulling
Or
up my
even
Google
less than
Maps to do a measurement real quick.
Yeah. So yeah, it's okay. I'm guessing about almost 3/4 of the mile to the Starship. So yeah, that'll be about a mile, a little bit less than that, but like 0.95, I'm gonna guess. But what do you get for the Google Maps number, Falcon?
1.54.
Oh, way off.
Ooh, see,
From
I
the
knew it was
camera
more
or
than one.
from the camera or from the Starship? Either way, I'm way off.
From the Starship to the roadblock, it is about 1.5 miles.
There you go, Gary. See, you asked and we deliver.
And we're about 3/4 mile from Starship, so the remainder is from us to the roadblock on Sentinel Cam.
All right, Nerdy McNerdface, who again has the greatest name in the history of names, who's been a member for 2 months. Thank you, Nerdy. Has a thrust puck for Super Heavy 1 been spotted? Thomas, that is all you.
Have the what been spotted? Missed that part. Sorry.
The thrust puck. Has the thrust puck for Super Heavy 1.
Maybe. As far as I know, I don't think so. There is one weird anomaly that I've seen in RGV's photos. It has 8 points that are a thrust puck fashion where they're angled, They are the rectangles where you would mount a thrust, the actual rafters to, but it looks a little bit dirty, and it's just a ring, and that's it. That's all there is to that thrust puck, is those 8 engine mounting points. There's no other parts for it, as far as I can see so far. So it is basically a small possibility that it has 8, but I need more than that to confirm, because I've seen things like that before, which are basically throwaways for other engine mounts. That, yeah, this must be a new design. No, that's a really old design, but we're actually kind of going back to some old designs for, let's say, I think it's SN15 and above. We'll have the new thrust puck design. From what I can tell, there's a downcomer that's a single methane downcomer, and it splits off into 3 rafter engines, but it goes through the center where it used to go through basically the edges of the thrust puck. And in the original versions after Mark 1, because that Mark 1 actually had the going down the center as well, but like SN1, it had the methane basically coming out the edges of the dome. So you'd have 3 punctures for just doing methane to the rafter engine, and they didn't like that, so they went to the thrust puck, and then the edges of the thrust puck, and then the very center of the thrust puck in the newest design. So there's been, I don't know, at least 5 variations so far, and basically the thrust puck for the booster number 1 or super heavy number 1, that one is going to basically have, I think, just 3 for the first iteration, because you don't need all of the extra engines, and you don't want to risk them. So that's what I'm thinking that they'll use just for that first one, because you only need to do a height of 150 meter hop just to test the vehicle, like you have with serial number 5 and 6. Except this was a 70 meter tall, like, skyscraper, essentially. So you're looking at, what, 20 stories or more. So it's going to be quite a monster as far as a flying building that looks like. But yeah, I think it only will take 3 Raptor engines, because you only need a minimum of 2 and less than 4, which 3 is the perfect number, and you already have those in plenty available quantities for Starship or something similar to Starship.
So, a couple things. First off, Zach K, thank you very much for the $10. It's $10 for a great stream and great friends. Chris Brown, thank you very much for the £10. It's just checking in. Still awake here in Cornwall, UK. Week of late night launches in Nerdle on the big screen. It ain't over yet. Rocket Fuel by the Gallon, excellent commentary, and thanks to Lab Padre. Chris, you are very welcome. Thank you very much for that. Jeff Rowe, thank you very much for the $10. So, got a question here for everybody. Rusty Buckets loves coming in chat. You always try to make it worthwhile. So the first time we raised $100 to get Rusty in chat. The second time, I think we raised $150. Did we do 300?
Yeah, the second time
so?
we did.
Do you think we could get Rusty?
I don't know.
Oh, we did 150 the second time.
No, the second time.
I think we did 150
we asked for
the second
150. We got 300. It happened within.
Well, we got 300.
Yeah,
Does
but
it
it
get her
happened
to
like in
sing
a minute and a
in
half.
chat? How much to get her to sing?
So I'm wondering, can we want to sing?
How much do we need to make her sing?
There's not enough. No, there's not enough money for that. Ray doesn't have enough couches to get Rusty to sing on stream. I'm gonna say let's do 200. If we get $200, we'll get Rusty to come in and talk with us for a while. So, chat, it's up to you guys if you want to hear Rusty. and Ray doesn't have enough money in his couch for that. So, just putting it out there. By the way, this is Jeff. I'm one of the commentators. I'm here with Thomas and Falcon, our other 2 commentators tonight. Just hanging out, talking, answering questions for everybody. If you have questions, put in @questions in the chat there. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. If you are not a member, right to the left of that, click join, become a member, join our Discord, hang out with all of us. It's great. If you haven't already, please like the channel. That helps promote it on YouTube, which gets us more viewers and in turn more members and subscriptions. So we'll put that out there. Right now, it looks like we had a recycle. What we're thinking, at least of some kind, because we had a D tank and then we had the condenser turned on. We're looking very condensation-y, but we don't have any engine chill right now, so we might just be part of the wet dress rehearsal that Lab was saying, which makes sense. But yeah, so
Lab gets good. He gets these details pretty good as far as guessing. Like he got the tent right. Like the tent didn't fly. It stayed exactly where it was, as if taking a raptor to the face of a tent doesn't move it. He got that one right. He's got, well, what was it, like 3 or 4 others that were spot on like that. So I'm thinking wet dress rehearsal is probably right. But wet dress rehearsal then followed by a static fire, I would be up for that, but Glenn Lab would be wrong, and that would break his winning streak.
can't have
I'm
that.
just the optimist.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris Brown. Thank you, Jeff Deem, or Jeef Deem. I don't know how you exactly pronounce your name. And you're both calling out for Rusty. Rusty Buckets, there's Frosty Rockets on the menu. Thank you, Chris. Friday Ray.
And Ray, another
La
$2.
la la, testing 1 2 3.
We hear you, Ray. Don't worry, man. We never forget you.
Yep, he found the
right.
$2 more in the couch.
Yep. I go to Ray's house one day, dude. I could be rich just looking through his couch. So,
So I guess the next question. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Dan Hornbeck says, why do another static fire or wet dress rehearsal when they've already had a successful one recently?
I think it's just because they would have time. That's basically why I think. What do you think, Falcon?
Very good answer for that. But to me, I would guess that they haven't ever put a full prop load worth of liquid oxygen, liquid methane in the vehicle yet for such a flight. They've done the static fires, which probably only has like 20, 30 tons maybe of total propellant. And then for the 150-meter hops we saw, maybe up to probably about 100 tons of propellant or so. I'm probably a little off on that. But just to wrap this up real quick, since it looks like we have frosting vehicle building, I would guess that this is a wet dress rehearsal for prop load, basically.
Oh, that's a really
Definitely,
good thought.
yeah. It's definitely different. The frosting that we're seeing right now, it looks different than what we normally see. So I would agree that we're seeing it. They're doing it differently somehow. We are getting some venting, from both tanks, but definitely that frost line right now is, very solid. All the way across Starship. So,
Yep.
Bubba Conway, who for y'all's efforts, thank you very much for the $30, Bubba. We appreciate it. Louis Bretchen, thank you very much for the $20. You are awesome, steely-eyed missile man. Yeah, it's interesting. Said it's just looking at how it's frosting over, and I don't think I've ever seen that line forming how it is right now, right by the wings. It's interesting.
Only the other time is just cryo, right?
Yeah, whenever they do just the liquid nitrogen test for the whole tank, is usually when we see pure white frost like that on the vehicle.
Right.
Even for the 150-meter hops, I don't believe we saw solid frost lines on the side of the vehicle.
So I'm wondering if it's just a nitrogen test today. If you're seeing this, and we don't have any confirmed notices put out for a potential event occurring. So an overpressure event, which basically means methane. That's where you have a very big overpressure event that could occur. So nitrogen, maybe. I haven't seen anything that's definitive, but it is hanging around in the air for quite a while. Nitrogen does kind of do that sometimes. It just holds on to its nice, cool condensate as it's flowing away. But so does LOX and methane. Methane just to a lesser degree. It goes away and evaporates very quickly. So, well, between LOX, which that would be LOX coming out of the port. So if you worked with LOX and nitrogen as a test setup, you could work with it. Just hard to say exactly which one we're doing.
Let's go with that. All right, we got more questions. You've got questions, we've got answers. Dan Hornbeck asked, Elon mentioned that there would be some design changes to SN15. What do you think they might be?
I very well believe SN15 might be the first Starship that see thrust mounts on the thrust puck for the RVACs, the reactor vacuum engines, which are predicted to have up to 380 seconds of ISP. And then we just saw its first static fire, I think just over a month and a half ago. I can't remember the exact date. But for SN15, I think we'll see a full belly of TPS. We'll see a finalized version for the air surfaces. And then we also will potentially see Raptor vacuum engines on the physical vehicle itself instead of a test stand.
Everything he just said. Yeah, I agree. I agree with every single thing that Falcon just said. So, it's very possible that that will be quite possibly the last major change to Starships. You know, if they are doing SN numbers after that, if they are going to have, you know, another one or two variants, I think we won't see that many past SN15. You know, maybe 16, maybe 17, but I think by that point they should be pretty well down to a, you know, a finalized version of Starship.
So I'm just want to say one other thing. So like SN15 and the differences in that one are orbital. But the thrust puck section is different. They might do basically the penetrations for the other RVACs through the dome, as Falcon said, and basically it's, I think, the version 1 that Elon had talked about a while ago, and like we've had parts for all these other SN like 13 and actually 14. We saw parts before 13, but we have these parts coming up around the same time that he was talking about version 1. I think that is version 1 of Starship, where it's basically locked down. We're basically in version point, I don't know, 5 or 0.7 right now for, or maybe, well, because if it's SN8, we're on version 8. Or 0.8 for SN8, something along those lines. It's not quite the version 1 that's locked down. Looks like we have a couple of donations I can go through and thank real quick, because they're still coming in. So App Kerman says, hope you're all safe. I used to live in South Padre and miss it a lot living in Alaska now. Hopefully when this is all over, I'll be able to visit next year and maybe see Starship in person. So yeah, App Kerm, I hope you get to come back and visit in person again soon.
It looks like we have LOX header tank venting at the top of the vehicle now.
Yes, we do. So they do actually need to vent off the top. Oh, you just potato there. What was that?
Yep. Nope, I'm good.
But yeah, so that LOX venting, we usually see that happening when they're trying to relieve the gases inside the tank and they want to fill it up for the header tank. There is basically a line that's coming out from the top of the tank, and I think it just goes very much to the very top, and then it would start spitting out LOX, liquid LOX, if you just kept filling it up. But basically that's the pressure relief right there. And yeah, you can see it right there. And then there's right below that is another larger vent. I think it's attached to the bottom of the tank. I don't think I've only seen that. I think I've only seen it open up once, and that's during like the full vent process. But a while back we did have that little scare where they lost pneumatic control. So the vent right now that you're seeing at the very top of Starship is controlled through pneumatics. It basically is just a gas line that opens up the valve in order to release the pressure as it's sitting there and building up pressure with the locks while it warms up over time. But last time they did have that little scare where they had lost pneumatics control for that valve, and what they ended up just relying on was what's called a burst disc. It's just about a half, or like a silver dollar or less size just piece that it basically at a certain pressure it breaks, and that's it.
That's what very well saved SN8 from needing a whole new nose cone.
Yes, that would have been
At
terrible.
least news cone,
Yeah.
if not more. All right, we got another question from Kilo. How many tankers will be needed to refuel Starship to get it to Mars? I
So,
believe number 7. I think it's 7 to 8 or 8.
so I did some preliminary math. To get to Mars, I budgeted about 4,200 meters per second. And the reason being is it takes about 3.8 kilometers per second to do the initial Mars insertion, and then you need about 400 meters per second for the mid-course corrections, and then of course the landing burn once you get to Mars. Um, to get that amount of propellant up to a Starship, assuming you have a tanker variant that can get 150 tons of propellant into low Earth orbit and transferred onto a Starship vehicle, you would need about 3 to 4 refuelings. If you want to refill the entire Starship up, you could actually get about 100 tons up to Jupiter, and that's a much greater amount of velocity compared to Mars. You only actually need about half a tank's worth of propellant on Starship to get that 100-ton rating out to Mars or the Moon.
Okay. Paul Dion said, "What is the squirt to the right that happens just before ignition? Is it a purge?" It
Sort of.
is?
It's the Raptor's actually spinning up and the lock's spinning out because it's going to be higher pressure at that point. Oh, speaking of which, we have engine chill, almost like a spurt, but that spurt is basically the liquid oxygen coming out when you see it. It's like a squirt gun. The pressure is higher, it goes out further, and then it does outgas pretty quickly. So that's what you're sort of seeing right now is you're seeing outgassing of the engine chill, and you can actually see liquid coming down at this point. That's why it just went down. That was a great question and great timing.
And this is a lot of engine chill. This is more like what we see, because we were seeing on all 3 engines, and just holy cow,
Yeah,
But
it's
there
really
is-
starting.
it's pouring.
I don't see any sirens going off on Sentinel Cam, and so far it's looking like a really cool, really, really cold in that case, engine chill and wet dress rehearsal. Crow, here I come.
Yeah, I'm still debating this is nitrogen or LOX, because do you know that LOX descend is much heavier than nitrogen, if I remember correctly. So it should sink much quicker than nitrogen. But we are getting that bluish hue to it as it's ejected, which would indicate liquid oxygen, if memory
Oxygen,
serves correctly.
Yep.
I'm looking for the hue, and I don't see it.
Yeah, I
seeing a
only
little bit
see it
more
when it.
Brown color. Let me look at the other one.
I don't know. Light is playing tricks on us.
Yeah, the higher definition version does kind of look a little bit more blue and not brown.
This would be a lot more, in my opinion, than we've seen even during static fires and so on, when they've actually been fueling up for a static fire. This looks like a lot more venting from the chill valve, or from the chill vents than we're used to.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's definitely way up there. So the volume and more importantly the duration. We've seen them do that, but it hasn't been for this long. Usually, it vents like that for 5-10 seconds, and then you see the purge, and then you have the static fire. So, yay, new stuff.
All right, Jez asks, do you think that when en route to Mars, Starship will point its fuel tank section toward the sun to provide a little radiation protection, or will it get too hot and require a sort of barbecue roll?
So that barbecue
Um,
roll that he's mentioning was used on the Apollo or on the Apollo Command Service Module. They would do this roll to maintain the proper temperatures inside the cabin and inside the service module for the fuel cells, the liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen. As for Starship, I think it would be, and this is just my unprofessional opinion. I think the best way would be to point the rear end of Starship where you have the engines, the heavy engines, which are made of a lot of heavy metals, basically. And then you also have now three bulkheads between the sun now and where the crew are supposed to be living. Now the main issue would be the boil off at that point. But I do believe that they'll probably add some layers of insulation. Multi-layer insulation is what a lot of vehicles like Centaur use, which is an upper stage for Atlas. And that vehicle has insulation to ensure that for the longer duration missions, they can keep the cryogenic propellants cold. You'll need a lot more of that for a mission that's up to 8 months long, but I believe that's very well what they could do for this.
there's also the solar panels. The solar, which again makes more sense to have it facing the engines facing the sun. All the renders you've seen have the solar panels facing, kind of the back side or back and front of the Starship. So they'll want those pointed at the sun, which means having the engines pointed at the sun as well. Which of
Could you
course
use
also
the
work as
back of the
shape.
flaps, the lower, I'm sorry, the flings, or the flaps in the back as solar panel systems as well? Just thinking about it, you'd want to get as much surface area, and those are really good for it.
Except how would you deploy solar
They're already
panels
there,
to
just
them?
like on Dragon.
Yeah, but they don't. Dragon doesn't re-enter Earth with its solar panels. It dumps them.
True, that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
in space you're fine, but you can't reorbit with them on.
we haven't seen those giant blanket solar panels in a render since like 2017 with Interplanetary Transport System, if I remember correctly. We have not seen a large render or video of a starship using those. We've seen the moonship renders use solar panels up on top, if I remember correctly, around the nose cone where the LOX header would be. I very well might be wrong, but I don't
No,
think we've
that's the only thing
seen.
I could think of that's been for a while since the ITS days.
Which brings up a very good point. If they're not in the renderings, is that intentional? And if so, where is it going to get power from?
Oh, that's
'Cause
beyond speculation on that one
yeah,
because the renders
yeah,
are
'cause
not like I found that they are inaccurate a lot of parts, and then they're accurate in some parts. It's just depends on the artist, I guess, who does them and how much information they got. And I don't think they're given a ton of information. They'll be given a basic design and say, here, make this, and they have to kind of make it up as they go. Like the solar system that unfurls, it just kind of looks like a fan from like a Chinese fan that you blow yourself off with. Just it unfurls and it goes into a stick. There's that version of it on ITS, and I'm like, I've never seen any solar system or anything even close to that. Oh, more LOX header tank venting, sweet.
and a lot more frost. We're getting all frosty.
Going from the top down though, that's the weird part.
I got nothing. All right, we got another question from. Where we at?
I do have a quick update from our good friend Colmar. He says that nitrogen and oxygen are identical in atomic weight, N2 being 28 and O2 being 32. So close enough. Methane is at 16. And you do see the methane is a lot lighter. It goes upwards a little bit more than anything else. And it disappears. So methane's always easy to spot, but when we're dealing with nitrogen and oxygen, it's hard to tell. But yeah, thanks, Colmar. That was a great update.
All right, Super Viking says, Chances of an actual launch this weekend. Would you all take the risk of driving 10 hours from Dallas?
Is it really 10 hours to drive from Dallas down to Boca Chica?
Worth it.
It's like 8.5.
Good
It's like 8,
lord,
or I think it's
Texas
like
is
8.5.
massive.
Texas is huge. So here's my thought. If you've got nothing to do this weekend, knock yourself out. You know, if you
Take the
if you wanna
family.
go
Go on
grab
a
take the family.
vacation. Go to the
I'm not
beach.
saying that, I'm not saying that Brownsville is the most hottest destination spot or vacation spot in the world, but find something to do. Um,
I would say South Padre Island though is they've got beaches, they have hotels, they've got pools, they've got pretty much everything.
it's also the middle of winter.
True, but it's 76 degrees.
Yeah, it's still
And
pretty warm down there.
and for me, like that's really good. I'm at like what 20 degrees right now.
So you're thrilled with 70.
Oh yeah.
To me, yeah. If you understand that you might be there the whole weekend, that they might not hop on Friday, hop on Friday or Saturday or Sunday. If you're not going to be devastated if you go there and they scrub all 3 days, absolutely. You will be miles and miles away. We've talked about they're going to clear between 5 and 10 miles of radius around there for the hop. That being said, it will still be awesome to see. You'll still see it. You'll still get to say, cool, you saw the very first Starship flight. Hopefully you'll see the very first Starship landing on the pad where it's supposed to land, not in the Gulf of Mexico. To me, yes. I mean, I'm in Southern California. To me, it's a more expensive plane ticket and a hotel, so I'm not quite there yet. But for sure, when they get more regular, I will absolutely travel down there to see. But yeah, I would say if you're in Dallas or more south, it could be very much worth it.
And I'll
to
tell
go
you
watch it hop.
one secret to this whole thing. Not a lot of people are booking hotel rooms in winter, despite it's Texas, South Texas. If you can afford it or you can do it, I would say go for it. You're looking at a weekend, maybe Monday at max from looks like the weather, but it's kind of dependent on the weather too. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the notams and notices for closures, and you would probably want to jump in our Discord server, see what's going on there. We have other people that are doing the same thing. So it's a pretty good trip down for 10 hours, but it would still be worth it if you're going to make a trip out of it. The next question we have looks like from Dan Ferguson. Do they always use the dishes by the Sentinel cam to communicate with the Starship when doing a static fire? And if they are not aimed at Starship, there won't be a static fire? That's the question Dan has.
I believe in the past we've seen it pointed at Starship for static fires. I'm not entirely sure. I don't see them as having a reason to do so if they still have the ground support equipment attached, because they can send signals through the ground support equipment up to the vehicle. But I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the dishes. Usually when there's a static fire, I'm paying attention to the vehicle.
Yeah, I paid
I would
attention
agree.
too.
We've
It's
seen them
always been-
point to that
sorry.
direction. Others, we've seen them point in that direction, but they've also been pointing that direction when there was going to be a launch in Florida, the same day or the next day. So it's, are they pointed at Starship or are they pointed at Cape Canaveral or telemetry for the actual Falcon 9 launch? We have seen them pointed down a lot. Clearly, some of that could just be testing. It's absolutely testing the telemetry that they're getting from Starship and verifying that it's all fair and working. It'll be interesting, for the hop, especially to see, where they pointed. Do they keep them pointed straight up? Do they point them at? Of course, pointing them at Starship doesn't do much good when Starship's going to go 50,000 feet in the air. But to see if they follow it, or what they do with the antennas. Do they use one? Do they use both? We'll find out. It'll be entertaining either way.
I think the next question is actually kind of directed at me specifically. So Juan Ruiz asks, is static fire canceled since it's been removed from the live status? And I'd say it was never scheduled to begin with. I get to eat crow on that. I'm sorry if I said it was definitely a static fire, because it's what I think was going to happen. But apparently no static fire based off of what we're seeing tonight. There's a lot of engine chill, but no sirens. There's nothing even remotely close to it, as far as I can tell. So they're just basically doing a wet dress rehearsal.
I'm going to say I've never seen them dump this amount of oxygen or nitrogen through the engines for this long of time. I mean, it's been
How
just
cold
constant
can you go?
Right. This has been the last like 15, 20 minutes of just absolutely pouring. No, it's not even venting gas. It's liquid oxygen or nitrogen just pouring out of the engines. Or it said the last 20, at least 20 minutes, 25 minutes. But we do like it. We do like it when we see things new, you know.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be going through this again, trying to figure out what they were exactly doing. We'll kind of figure out more. Like, so there's another vent from the LOX header tank, but it's just basically relieving pressure, which it's supposed to. Otherwise, you have to use that new burst disc they replaced the old burst disc with. And so yeah, there's just a lot of things going on here. Oh, now they can see the blue on the right-hand side. So I'm thinking that is the LOX. But that one at the top, it's coming off a little bit more brown. So I'm thinking it's either brown or a little bit more yellow. And that might be the nitrogen that's coming off the line just above the engine chill in the center. There's just kind of this brown or yellow tint to that one. I think we might be going for both nitrogen and oxygen.
That I can see that, you know, oxygen coming out of the engines, nitrogen coming out of the methane tank.
The method, I don't know what that is exactly to call that. I call it a nubbin. It's just this nub. It just sits there, doesn't do much besides this, and vents occasionally in weird circumstances. And this is a weird circumstance. Have to go through and trace the inside lines again and figure out where that one goes to. But yeah, that goes into the engine skirt section. So it's a little bit different for that one. Might be like to the LOX tank or something different.
So Justin Smith says, Brian Dixon said, could they be doing a longer static fire? Would that explain the lack of reek condenser? No, I would say no. Just the fact, as we said, there was no notice for a static fire, which they absolutely have to give for safety reasons. That's just how they're doing the testing. You know, the last static fire, I mean, it was wham bam, thank you ma'am. They were in and out. You know, said everybody missed or as I said, talked right over the static fire because it was so quick. We've never seen the engines frost over how they are right now when there was a static fire. That's only been when they were doing cryo testing, when they're fully filling the tanks, which makes sense for the amount of oxygen, what looks to be oxygen that they're dumping out of the engines right now, and for how long. It almost looks like they are just in a constant state of filling and purging at the exact same time. Which, you know, so we haven't seen this before, how they're doing it right now, where that tank is frosted on the top and the bottom. For whatever reason, the middle isn't frosted over, but is what it is. So I would not relate this at all to doing a longer static fire or a different kind of static fire. This looks to be just absolute wet dress rehearsal with, you know, the lower tank.
Justin Smith asks, are the drones there mostly for recording the event or for range visual inspection?
Far range visual inspection. Both. The drones are there. You know, I know that they take videos with the drones. They do use them for inspections. Clearly, you know, when Starship is especially preparing for a static fire, when there's methane on board, it is absolutely not safe for humans to be around. So they can use the drones for any visual inspections. They could use them just for, you know, stock footage, you know, for obviously they make a lot of promo videos, you know, all the videos they play in front of Falcon 9 launches, you know, they could use fly drones around just to get for that. But I would say mostly for visual inspections of starship, making sure that nothing is out of the ordinary, making sure there's nothing leaking, that they can see, that everything looks to be normal. And they clearly they fly them a lot around the starships. So I'd say both.
I just saw a coyote go by Sentinel Cam at 8:39:40-ish. That was cool. But yeah, the had a little microphone trouble on my end, but yeah, I think you got it right. Visual inspections, far range, recording, everything else sounds about right. Paul Holt donated 15 Australian dollars and asks, are we going to see a relight tonight? What are the chances? Nobody has relight a Raptor on Starship yet, much less relit one in flight. Surely they need to do it before flight testing.
Falcon, what do you think?
I think we're gonna see a relight test, if that makes sense. As for relight during flight, I think right, looks like we're getting a detanking vent. Very big vent over on the camera.
Holy cow.
And the LOX tank, wow.
Yeah, really big detank vent.
So far, it doesn't look like we have any methane, but we do have a lot of LOX and probably nitrogen.
I think that's the biggest one I've seen.
I have to check out Sapphire for that one.
Yeah. Let me see.
Oh yeah, that's going out past the fuel farm on Sapphire. Right. Holy cow. That's going over 60 meters.
Yeah, it's pushing really far.
Yeah, it's a calm down now, but wow. Quite something.
And all the engine chills stopped.
And all the engine chills in all the world, you had to come here.
Oh, yeah. It's massive.
That is quite a bit. Like, look at all of that. Yeah, it's wrapped up for the most part.
Coming up to the top of the hour.
Yep, we have 15 minutes left in the window.
So I think we're going to go past the window for the road closure. I won't see them leave at 9, I think. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it'll take them a little bit longer to wrap up.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting back to Paul Holt's question, no relight tonight, unfortunately. The chances are very, very low of that. I would say 0 at this point, unfortunately. Hoping for more of a chance, but I don't see anything at this point with the window closing as it is, and without seeing much happen with the methane tank. And at the same time, it's basically just very close to 0 hour for a hop. So they might have already just said, hey, we've done it at McGregor, it'll work here. It's just the systems, we haven't seen them work in conjunction, and I think maybe that's what the hop is going to be all about. We're going to test every possible scenario and condition that we need to. That's basically be all of the jostling of the fuel on the main tanks while you have the header tanks do the relight, where it's supposed to be stable and everything else. Let's see how stable it really is. Let's see if they have enough fuel in those tanks that they've been fully saturated. There's no air in them or gas of any kind to create bubbles that would damage the engines. There's also one other thing to point out, that the header tanks are not the only part of the fuel system that are basically fully full of fuel. That also includes the downcomers. They are full of fuel as well. So you have to calculate that into your kind of testing your engine burns and relights and everything else like that.
So why did we not fill the methane tank? Why was this test, why do we think it's clearly just the oxygen tank is completely frosted over, absolutely no frost on the methane tank. I don't think we saw the top much, the nose cone header tank, I don't think, was chilled. So I'm wondering, why was just the oxygen tank completely
We
filled,
do
and
have
apparently
pressure
not.
on it. I can say that because
Oh,
we've seen
pressure,
stuff
but
come
not
out
like
of the methane tank, but it wasn't filled with liquid methane.
right,
That's
or
for sure.
liquid anything, right, or liquid anything for that matter,
Yeah.
which is interesting. So why dump all that fuel, or sorry, nitrogen or oxygen through the engines? Why apparently completely fill the oxygen tank and not touch the methane tank? It's an interesting one.
Yeah, the only thing that can come to mind at the moment as to why they're doing, because this looks like liquid nitrogen. We haven't seen this with the LOX and liquid methane since they've done the cryo testing. The main reason why I believe they would be doing this would be to or not a recertification, but to ensure that the vehicle can still go through the stages of cryo, if that makes sense. Because I would bet almost this vehicle's gone through more pressurization cycles and more cryo cycles than any of the vehicles that have come before it because of how much testing they've done, how many different engines they've switched out, and so on that they've had to recertify, and so on and so forth. So it makes sense that they're pressurizing, filling this the lost tank at least all the way fully again, and pressurizing it to a near or to probably above flight pressures, just to ensure that the welds are still good and that everything is still safe for them to proceed with a flight on Friday.
But why not do that to the methane tank? That's I completely agree with that, but it's like, why would
I've got an idea.
both? Why?
So we have a problem with another article that we've seen, which was 7.1. The way that it failed was a common issue between it and serial number 8. It's that top bulkhead for that methane tank. It has a 301 to 304L interface. It's the last of its kind as far as using 301, and it's the only place that uses it at, as far as I can tell. And that interface on 7.1 failed. And I'm thinking that this is similar as far as this vehicle, because we know it has 301 in it. And that 301 interface, they've seen them immediately as soon as 7.1 failed, they put in weld doublers on SN8 just so that the potential failure would not occur in the same way on those areas. So it's basically a giant ring of weld doublers around the very top dome where it meets in the rest of the interface, and it's not the actual connection between the cylinder and the dome, but it's the actual dome itself that it looked like it failed on. And that's my thinking, is that because it has a questionable area that they're not sure if this will go to 8.5 is my thinking, and it will only be going up to like 6.5 bar, and they're basically just doing the test with the LOX tank, maybe just because they don't want to risk that methane tank rupturing like it would have on like SN 7.1. So especially before a major test like the hop, you don't want to do anything like that. But we're filled all the way to the brim as far as ice right now. That's kind of different. It's been slowly creeping up.
Is the LOX tank on SN8 completely 304L, and the methane tank is the 304 and 304L?
Maybe. I'm not sure on that interface for that dome.
Because that's the only thing that makes sense for that statement, though, right? Is that the oxygen tank doesn't have the same problem as the methane tank does. I know, so I get it. If they're not going to fill them all the way, as I was talking about earlier, if they're only going to fill them, let's say a third of the way full for the hop, they're not going to get to those pressures to that mass, then it's fine. But then you're still risking, you're risking SN8 by doing that. If it is a combination, the 304 and 304L on the oxygen tank, then you're still doing the same risk. If they did just, let's say they just pressurized it to 8.5 or beyond flight pressure, then that was still a risk. And it's like, why would you take it? Why would you take that risk if you're not going to fill it to that pressure and that amount for the flight anyways?
Yeah, the 8.5 is for human rating. They don't need to human rate SN8. They need to human rate the whole system, and they've done that with the 301 series, but they need to basically redo that for the 304L series, which is SN9 and above, or we might see another test tank at some point. We thought that might be serial number 13. Turns out serial number 13 looks like to be just a regular Starship with like everything else. So there's still pieces coming through and being built for that one. But yeah, it is just a very large question on, do they have 301 at that locks to CH4 interface? And thinking about it, I would have to say it is 304L at that part. My guess is based off the fact that it is using the same kind of dome structure. It's basically a cylinder, or not a cylinder, a sphere in the center. Then there's a dome surrounding it, and that you would want to probably do the same materials. The other ones are basically a top. It's a cap that is basically stamped and pressed. These ones are basically form fitted or something along those lines. It's not exactly the same. So they just had extras around. I think that's what they used for serial number 8. And they thought, oh yeah, this will be fine. It'll actually give it higher strength. Turns out it seems to weaken the system because you have to have a higher heat weld for 301, but it's a lower weld heat for 304L. And between the two, they just couldn't get it right. So SN8 got the weld doublers, and that'll help solve the issue, but they won't go to that 8.5 bar pressure.
Sounds logical to me.
Yeah.
I think that one's thoroughly cooked.
Yeah, that was the long-winded answer.
Christian Brerer donated €5. He says, do you think they will do hop at a daytime just for safety reasons in case of rapid unscheduled disassembly, or RUD? As always, thanks from Germany.
Yes and yes. I think every single thing about the hop will be done during daylight. They will want as much visibility for it, for any debris. Obviously, there's always a fire hazard, a fire risk, so they want as much visibility for that as possible. As well as because they're doing an evacuation of Boca Chica Village and, that whole area, I would assume, they're going to want those people to be able to come sleep in their houses at night, so they would not do that type of large-scale evacuation at night. So, I know the windows are really wide for those launches, but I think the actual window for the launch itself will be much smaller, during actual daylight. So,
yep.
And you are welcome from Germany.
So speaking of the hop and tests and everything, what do you all believe the percentage of chance of SN8 getting through flight and landing upright on the pad is?
Do we still have that poll? Still there, or is it gone?
I didn't even know we had
It
a
might
poll.
still be there. It may still
I did
be.
A poll. Let's see. I put a poll in. We'll see if it pops up. So, it has been 75, 25. 75% saying it'll land successfully. 25% saying it will not. Elon has said it's got a 1 in 3 chance, so he went the exact opposite way from what our chat said. I don't think the poll's still there.
I went with 1 in 10, so a 10% chance, but I'm going to stick with that optimistic 10%, because SpaceX has proven people wrong who says, oh, they can't do it, and I'm going to say, oh, they can do it. It might just take them a little bit longer, but I think that first try, there's a really good chance that they could nail it. So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the Elon tweet because I know he tweeted about it.
Oh, it was a vote. It wasn't. I did a poll, but it's actually vote. The vote right now is, will the launch happen or be delayed? Which is not the question we were asking, but
that's a good vote question. Will the launch happen or be delayed? Go ahead and fill out that particular vote.
Yep. A lot of people saying 100%. I think you guys are insanely optimistic that it's going to land upright, stay upright, and that somebody's not going to accidentally hit the flight termination button.
I'm hoping for that accidental flight termination button at the very end. I mean, just go for the NASCAR, like wow, we've got something going on. It's incredible. But at the same time, it's like, it's incredible. We've done everything else. All right, now it's time to clean it up. Go with the next one.
You know what, though?
The system very quickly, though.
It wouldn't be as impressive because it would mostly be out of fuel at that point. It'd be very, very little fuel left. So I don't know. If
It
you're
would
going to
just
hit the flight
crash and
termination
burn,
button,
basically.
yeah, if you're going to hit the flight termination button, do it right when you get the fuel tanks completely filled, pressed for flight. Then somebody
Oh
actually
no,
hits
no.
Yes, and destroy the whole pad complex. That's
Yeah,
a good
right.
idea.
Everything. You're right. Everything just goes.
You're just going for the worst case scenario, aren't you?
What do you say? It's like 7 tons of propellant all go up at once.
Everything must go. We're having a fire sale.
Oh my gosh.
Ryan Side said, works 100% of the time, 60% of the time. Exactly.
You have a giant steel cylinder sitting in your lawn. How about you fill it with some LOX CH4 and then throw a stick of dynamite inside and see what happens?
Well, we can
That's
see
a
two of them
very
just basically sitting on the sides. That's the flight termination system that we're talking about, which are those 2 white dots. So that's what you see above that big, giant white square is these 2 smaller white squares. Actually, rectangles, not squares, not equal sides.
Those are basically shaped charges that are pointed right at the methane tank. So yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about, the flight termination system is the kind of the emergency abort. So when they do the hop, or when they do the 15-kilometer flight, if something goes catastrophically wrong, if Starship gets too far outside of its predicted flight path, one Starship can detonate itself, but there's typically always also a manual thing. So you can literally hit a button, and those 2 shaped charges will detonate right into the methane tank, which will, of course, make very bad things happen, and it'll split Starship apart, blowing up everything and stopping Starship from coming crashing down on land where, bad things can happen. So hopefully we do not have to see those being used. And yeah, but if we do, it will be a very, very big explosion. So
yeah, looks like they're about to go over that time frame. Got about 3 minutes left.
Yeah. I'm just looking forward to the video in a few years from SpaceX. That's how not to build your Mars Colonial transport ship.
Yes,
and it's just all the individual failures during the program.
With whatever, I forgot what song is playing in the background, but yeah, with the classical music, watching 15 different starships blowing up. Boom.
Just don't do Love Boat again with that one. I mean, like, Love Boat was perfect for the Pharynx coming down. It was perfect, but not for the future one. Oh, that would be weird. The next question we have is from Jezza. Asks, the old BFR design with miniature delta wings and the ITS design didn't appear to have moving flaps. How are they supposed to control descent?
Their renderings for the current version didn't show them as moving either. They never showed the hinges on any of them. So I think they were probably the same thing, just the renderings were, very basic, very 30,000 foot view of the Starship, or, ITS or BFR or whatever. So I think they were probably always designed to do it. The renderings were just trying to make it look as pretty as possible. So they looked like they were all part of, one thing. Because these renderings you see, they don't show the hinges on all the drawings. All the videos that SpaceX has actually made, there are other ones that people have made that show them, but all the ones that SpaceX always make it look like a Starship. So I think it's just a lack of detail in the renderings that not showing them as being movable.
So yeah, with the ITS design, they just have that one basically delta wing in the back, and that's all. So it's basically shooting a bullet at a target that's millions of miles away and hitting it with pinpoint accuracy with some adjustments along the way, which you can do. We can cheat a little bit. And then it's basically all of the thrust vector control at the very end to make sure you go where you're supposed to and do that kickflip maneuver with that system. And they thought the delta wing in the back just one of them would work. And it was just a short, stubby little delta wing. Where the BFR design was basically like that Tin rocket, right?
Yep.
3. And yeah, one didn't do anything, but they all landed on those fins. But the 2 that were basically on the windward side, they did basically what Starship is doing. They would fold back and be able to provide the control surfaces, and I think they even had some forward control surfaces, just like this current starship. So it had basically 3 on the back and 2 at the top.
Thank
So
you very much for the.
Oh.
Oh no, sorry. Thank you very much for the $10. It says robes, slippers, and an eye patch. Arg, I'm a pirate. I have no idea what you're talking about, but I appreciate the donation. So
he's watching in comfort and style. So
Let's
yeah,
go with
works out.
yeah, let's go with that.
Daniel Rucci says, do you think it's more likely there'll be an explosion in the propulsion system that causes a RUD, or a control system failure that causes lack of control, e.g. lack of hydraulic fluid, etc.?
That is a really good question. I like that one. Wow. Okay.
So the Raptor going boom, or they can't control it and it goes boom.
Yeah. Or the wow.
I would-
Nobody's ever asked that. I love that question. Nobody's ever asked why will it go boom. I am going to go with 2 things. I'm going to do both.
Oh, you just potatoed out.
Okay, the Raptors aren't firing. Yeah, potatoed out. Raptors aren't firing, when it's falling down. So clearly, if it's going to fail there, it's going to be the control surfaces. I'm thinking it will fail when on the relight, when the header tank tries to relight, when it tries to do the crazy Elon, and something will fail with the Raptors then. Something about firing the Raptors during the crazy Elon, that the header tank will get an air bubble, which will basically blow up the Raptors. I think something around there. The vectoring will not work correctly, and it'll be the engine system that causes it to blow up. I don't think the control surfaces will fail on the descent. So I think if anything that will fail, I think it'll be on the crazy Elon maneuver. Either the control surfaces will break and not handle the stresses of it, or the engines will fail. They'll get an air pocket in them, and the turbo pumps will explode. That's what I'm going with.
All things being equal, which of the two do you think will fail most likely of those two?
Raptors.
I go with Raptors as well.
There's more moving parts inside a Raptor engine. It's a full flow staged combustion engine. It's extremely and incredibly complex. And as we've seen with the amount of engines that have been placed on the pad, I know that I believe it was SN32 was removed after they had the Martite issue that damaged it. But they'd had quite a few engines RUD on the test stand, and then also been taken off of starships during the static fire testing phase. So if it comes down to it, I believe that the engines would fail most likely over a pneumatic servo or an electric servo on the wings, or the flaps, sorry.
Squinty Toe says, "Come on, Calico, don't doubt the vibe." I don't doubt the vibe. I am all optimistic for the success, but I'm also a realist. Again, Elon himself said 1 in 3 chance of it succeeding. If it's going to fail, it's going to fail at as everybody just said, at the part with the most possibilities for error. So the crazy Elon maneuver requires the Raptors to work flawlessly. It requires the control surfaces to work flawlessly, and more importantly, it requires the calculations that SpaceX predicted to be accurate, so that the wings, the flings, know how much to at what angle to be at, in conjunction with the Raptors vectoring the correct amount. So it's a lot of it's just were their calculations correct for what it'll take. If it fails, they will have an immense amount of data to make it better for SN9. But like I said, there's just a million things that have to go right in the period of just a few seconds. And as we were mentioning earlier, the how not to land an orbital booster, SpaceX has a whole lot of experience with crashing Falcon 9s. It took a lot of tries before they landed the first time successfully. So it stands to reason that best laid plans, even with Starship, that stuff can go wrong especially on the very first attempt. So I'm an optimist, I'm a fan, but I'm also, let's look at the data and say there's a whole lot that has to go right with something that has never been done, in space flight ever. So
in a lot of ways, Starship itself is like a Falcon 9 as far as some of the simplicity of the design. Large cylinder, powerful engines, multiple engines. But then in a lot of ways, it's so much different. You've got the aerodynamic surfaces. You have a new engine that's basically goes from a methane source, which is cool. That's kind of new, but not unheard of. But it basically is a full flow stage combustion engine, meaning it uses up as much as it can possibly do. And you are having so many different launches occur to do landings for potential Falcon I'm sorry, not Falcon, but Starship. The Falcon rocket, I was looking at it. It had 4 failures of trying to attempt to land it before it had success. But it had a bunch of other weird ones that were basically controlled ocean descents beforehand. They just plopped themselves in the water. And then, yeah, they had the first drone ship landing on the number 23. It was number 20. It was the first one to land on land. So they had a few more failures on the drone ship. The drone ship was kind of we got to aim down range. It's a little harder to, as far as fuel management and other things go. It's just amazing what they were able to do with just so many short tries, unlike the other ones. Like they did not try on a lot of the Falcon 9 boosters. It wasn't until number 20 tried to land on land. Sorry, I was just kind of, for Falcon 9, I just went off on that one, but it was a good one.
No, I liked it. I had mentioned I was at the Jason 3 launch at Vandenberg, which was the one that landed on the drone ship, and then the leg folded, underneath it, and it fell over. I was very disappointed that I was there, it landed, it was upright, and then the one leg didn't lock into position, and it fell over and kaboomed.
Oh wow! I didn't know you saw that one. Amazing.
Well, I didn't see
sad.
it. It was on a ship. Yeah, it was sad. Right?
Oh, okay.
And that one in the drone ship on that launch was way far out to sea, so you couldn't see the landing even if you were standing right there. It was a really far out drone ship landing.
Were you actually at Vandenberg at all, or
yes.
when you saw the launch? Okay, so you saw the launch, just didn't see the landing. Okay.
Well, that was when we talked about it. It was so foggy that you couldn't see anything. You could hear it, but you couldn't actually see anything. So go YouTube for the Jason 3 launch, and you'll see just how insanely foggy it was that day. So, all right, so we are past our test window. We've seen nothing new happening. It looks like we were just, venting out. Probably, ground service equipment is detanking or, removing the liquid propellant. It looks like, everything is just ambient right now. There's no pressure, on anything that's coming out. The wind has changed directions, which is interesting.
Yeah, we're going south.
Going north. Now it's going south.
If anything happens, it would be now. Yikes. Those south winds scare me. But, yeah, so Jonathan Morton, you're basically kind of answering his question right now of, now that wet dress rehearsal is estimated complete, is there enough time to static fire within the window? Obviously, the window is elapsed, but they are still sitting here. So yeah, there's nothing going to happen for a static fire, unfortunately.
Wah, wah, wah.
Got quite a few members to go through and thank and contributions, and we may have gone over some of these already, but Jeremiah Passor, Chad Herman. We have Jeremiah donated $10. Thank you for that. And then we have Jolly Roger. He donated $50. Wow, thank you so much for that. That's amazing. Says awesome coverage. Little Rabbit, $5. Passing donated about $5. Thank you for that as well. Michael Cooper, welcome to the Lab Padre green team, I guess you could say. Psychonaut, Sweet Nectar, fun times tonight. Thank you for the $10. Let's see here. I'm trying to make sure I've got all of them. Zach K, $10. He says $10 for a great stream and great friends. Thank you, Zach. Chris Brown donated €10. Just checking in. Still awake here in Cornwall. a week of late night launches in Nerdle on big screen. It ain't over yet. Rocket fuel by the gallon. Excellent commentary. Thanks to Lab Padre. Thank you so much for that, Chris. And Jeff Rowe donated $10. Scott B. Sorry, that's just a question. We'll get back to that hopefully soon. Friday Ray says root beer. Donation from Doug Wines for $2 Canadian. I think this is all about the GoFund Get Rusty on Here campaign. So
Yeah,
that's what we're basically seeing here.
Yeah.
Ray. Yep. Charlie Roger, $50. Awesome coverage. Lewis Breaching, $20. Bubba Conway, $30. Yahoo for all y'all's effort. Thank you for that, Bubba. Then we have, scrolling through here. Sorry, it takes a bit. App Kerman, $10. I think I said, oh yeah, I've read this one already, where he says, hope you're all safe. I used to live in South Padre and miss it along living in Alaska now. Hopefully when this is all over, I'll be able to visit next year and maybe see Starship in person. I say, please come back. Visit again soon and often. Starship is going to be amazing. There's going to be multiple of them. So you're not missing everything, but you're missing the beginnings a little bit. So come down and visit if you can. Mario Lorenzen, $5, and asks, are they going to fire the engines? Why are they chilling? Because it looks like they are doing a wet dress rehearsal, unfortunately. And let's see, I think there was a few more. JD. I'm sorry, that's another question. Not quite marked the way I was looking for it. And the last one here, I think that was the last one for the donations and new members. Thank you all so much for donating and being members to Lab Padre.
But because JD donated and it's been a member for 9 months, he did have a question that said, where is the methane header tank located? There are two of them. There is one basically right at the top of where the frost is right now. There's a methane header tank in between the oxygen and methane tanks, and then at the very nose cone there is another methane header tank.
Oh, that's the LOX header tank at the top.
Sorry, the LOX. Yeah, sorry, the LOX header tank is at the top, and yeah, the methane one is right in between the oxygen and methane tanks. It sits right in between the two of them. So, right. Sorry, I was thinking they were both methane, but it's one LOX and one methane. And those are what are used for the landing burn. Which I don't know if we mentioned that. Somebody else I saw a comment somewhere about the fuel sloshing around, which is exactly why they use the smaller, specifically round header tanks, is so that there is much less chance of getting air in the fuel system. If air hits the turbo pumps, they will basically explode, which would be bad. So they use two smaller header tanks to reduce the amount of air getting into the fuel system for the landing burn. Because clearly, if that goes bad, everything goes bad. So it looks like we are pretty much wrapping up here. We're past the window. We haven't seen anything new. We haven't seen anything, any additional fueling. We haven't seen any additional detanking other than that massive one that was there before. There's no active engine chill that we can see. This all looks to be, relatively just residual stuff kind of boiling off. I think that's where we're at.
So are you looking at wrapping up here for the night and just answering a few more questions, or?
Yeah, I think we're getting to that point tonight. You can tell that the frost line is starting to go down. You can see it's dissipating slowly. So most likely they're just detanking at this point.
Yeah, it's slow. It's not the full detank that we'd expect, but it's still sitting there, just holding. So Tim McLeod earlier asked about the engine chill. How can you tell when the engine chill occurs? So quickly, I'll answer that. In the current venting you see on Starship, there's two venting that are vertical from each other. It's the top one that you're looking at is not the engine chill, it's the bottom one, sorry. It is the bottom engine chilling. There's one on the right hand side and one on the left hand side as well. But there's just so much like condensate, that's clouds you can see forming around there, that yeah, it's kind of mixing together, but you can see at least that bottom one is the engine chill. So that's basically how you can tell when it's occurring, and then right before it fires, you'll see it kind of squirt out some liquid oxygen in order to basically spin up those turbo pumps.
You know, we could do that. What if we just fly through, some of the last couple questions here, or pick some of the last questions, and then we'll wrap it up. It's a question from Difficult about a relight. Why do they need to test it in addition to a static fire? They need to test it, one, because they never have, because it's a parameter of the mission that'll need to happen that they have not yet tested. It's also when they light the engines, as we see, they dump, they chill the engines. They dump nitrogen or oxygen or whatever gas through the engines, run methane through the engines to make them incredibly cold for when they light them. When they relight them, they don't have that opportunity. They can't, completely re-chill the engines to the extent that they do before they launch. So the engines are lit at a much, much higher temperature than they are at the first launch. So you'd want to test that. You'd want to make sure that nothing changes out of what you're expecting when you light the engines, when they are, said much warmer than they are normally. You hear on Falcon 9s, they'll say, oh, they're doing an MVAC chill. That happens just, a minute or so before they light the engines. When they're on the ground, we'll see engine chill for 10 minutes, before they light them. So it's lighting engines at a different temperature than what they normally are, and I would assume you'd want to test that to make sure nothing changes. They don't heat up too much, that all of that engine chill works correctly. So another question: would they have the flaps pulled in during the initial reentry, letting the tiles on the body take the heat, and when the speed is low enough, will they open the flaps? Presumably, yes. Presumably, they will have to dissipate a lot of heat, or using as little of the control surfaces as possible. As we said, where they just shear off. If you re-enter the Earth's atmosphere at 20,000 miles an hour with the wings fully extended, could they take that, or would they just absolutely rip right off the Starship? I would assume yes, they'll be folded out or folded in as much as possible on initial reentry. They'll burn off as much speed as they can, and then slowly start to lower them to make them more and more act like air brakes to slow down a Starship.
I'm trying to think if it's better to be opened up first or closed. That is a really good part of the question, because you're basically trying to slow it down as fast as possible, but you don't want to have those heats destroying your entire basically flap system, which is your aerodynamic surface or control surfaces essentially.
Greg Hanschiff, thank you very much for the $20. Absolutely appreciate it.
Thank you. Gary asks a question: are those the flight termination devices about halfway up? Yes. So if you're looking at the vehicle, you see the lines running straight up and down, and about halfway up there's those two white dots. Those are the flight termination system.
Nick H asks, can you guys draw an overlay like arrows to indicate things you were talking about at the time, e.g. the condenser? It's been brought up. Because of how we do our commentary and where the data comes from, it will take some investment and some technology to do that. I have brought up that exact thing you're talking about because, again, we understand that we're talking about, the LOX tank, the header tank, the condenser, the fuel
flight termination system. Yeah,
flight termination systems. Yes, it would be incredibly valuable. So it is something that's being looked into. Can't promise it'll happen, but yes, I do believe it would provide a lot of value when we're talking about very specific things and be able to point them out or circle them or, whatever.
I
do that.
would
So,
I would also suggest, Nick, if you like to learn about things and specific items and ask questions about them in real time, I do basically show and tells occasionally here as often as I can, where I basically share my screen. We go through photos, pictures, and videos. Actually, photos and pictures are the same thing, but we go through and basically look through all that, go down to the nth detail, especially if people have questions about like what is this thing, and I'll move my mouse to the the approximate area of where they're talking about, and yeah, right there. Okay, oh, this is like the flight termination system, or those are the lines for X, Y, or Z. Those kinds of things are what we can go through and answer together as a group. And I do the show and tells in Discord. So if you'd like to be able to do that, join Discord. So that's the link that should be popped up in the YouTube chat a little bit above your what you're hearing right now. It is free to join, but we do have a member section as well.
Spanky asks, will super heavy hops use a mass simulator, and how heavy will that be? I don't think so, because they're only going to launch with 3 engines, at first especially. They will not need a mass simulator for them. If once they do one with a full, I'm wondering if they'll ever do a super heavy 27 Raptor launch without a Starship on top of it. I don't see that happening. I think once they get to that point when they're doing 27 Raptor super heavy launches, that they'll have Starships on top of them, which will clearly be their mass simulator. So I don't know that we'll ever see a super heavy launch with a mass simulator.
Maybe a nose cone. That's about it. If at all, if it goes beyond 150 meters, it would need a nose cone, but that's about it.
And that's just for aerodynamics, not for mass.
Yeah.
So. Let's see.
Hey, but you want to put a SN5 or 6 on top?
There you go.
There you go. Here's your mass simulator.
Just slap a nose cone on it. And here you go.
Hey, there's a one that says NASA on it. It's white.
See,
pointy.
All pretty. It's pointy.
Might fall apart on you, but hey, there's one for you.
Ooh, here's a question from Katie Westbrook. They use fuel to help keep the bell cool on engines. My question is, has anyone attempted or thought about using a similar technique for re-entry across the surface of the vehicle? Yes, they have. It was in some of the kind of preliminary designs for different variants. What was it called again? It's not aspiration, but they're using the fuel to run it through the body of the Starship.
Autogeneous pressurization. So autogeneous pressurization is where you basically heat up the fuel from a gas or a liquid to a gas to pressurize the whole system, so that you can.
No. The
transpirational cooling for the leading edge of the wings.
Cooling.
Okay,
yes.
sorry.
So, yes, that has been considered. I think they've kind of eliminated it from the current versions of the Starship, but testing will tell. So yes, they have considered using that same thing, running the fuel through the body of the engine and essentially perspirating it through the body of the engine to cool. There have been, I don't know of any spaceship that has successfully used it, but it has been nukes. Nukes, and not a spaceship, it's a missile, but it has been used, just not in manned spacecraft. So nobody jumps on the back of Minuteman missiles. So
unless you're in a movie.
Unless you're in a Naked Gun movie or whatever.
I don't know. So I like this question from Valorian. Asks, why is it still being considered a hop instead of a flight? A hop is basically considered going from the same location to the same location, pretty much. With a flight, you're going from one location to another completely different location. So if we were going from here to an offshore platform, that would be a flight in my book. And also, if you are going orbital, that would be counting as a flight. But yeah, anything where you're going pretty close to where you left, that's going to be just a little hop, in my opinion. It's all about our own definitions of things.
From Becky, just a new follow. SpaceX launches in the last year. Fascinating coverage of SN8. What are the key points or stages this evening to watch out for? So, unfortunately, we got to this question kind of after all of those things happened. I would say, kind of what Tom was saying earlier, if you want to, learn more about these tests and kind of what they're doing with SN8, the Discord server is a excellent venue to learn about it, to talk to people. Obviously, just watching more of our, the Lab Padre streams, listening to us commentate and talk about what's going on is one of the main areas, because as you might have seen tonight, we saw things that we haven't seen before. So, we learn every single time with every test when they do things slightly differently than they have before. So, kind of what to look out for changes a bit, depending on what test they're doing and what we expect they do versus what they actually do. So, I'd say come back and just watch more, and you'll learn a little bit, with each stream, each time you watch it. So just like us. So
I'm gonna ask for each of us to grab one last question, since it sounds like your microphone's dying, and we're probably getting a little tired now as well, and would like to enjoy the rest of the festivities that we're watching tonight. So Falcon and Jeff, go ahead and grab a question. I'll grab one too, and we can go through and ask the question and then answer them for ourselves, I guess.
Okay, I guess I'll do one from Dog Lover 32YT. I'm assuming that means YouTube. Will Star Hopper be okay if SN8 craters? And the answer to that, in my opinion, would be yes, but depending on the pressure wave. Because we know that SN8 will stay over the ocean until the very last moment, and then it will land. So if anything goes wrong during the initial descent, even during the initial engine ignition for the read light, it should just land in the water, and Starhopper should be all right. So everyone that's worried about Starhopper, which is their pride and joy, it should be all right unless for some reason, even after the engine ignition goes right, it's been controlling its descent properly, it just can't get the flip maneuver. That would be where we see Hopper put in the line of fire, so to speak.
So took my question, but that's okay.
Go ahead, take my question, Jeff.
There's a question from Tim E. Says, any chance we can identify telemetry traffic from the pad, frequency or data stream? If I identify telemetry, you mean kind of hijack, the Wi-Fi that's coming there, or the radio stuff that's coming from there? Probably not. SpaceX is going to stream the hop as well. I'm assuming they'll have some telemetry on there, which of course we can see and share. But there are on the Discord, which I believe is a member channel, there's is that Scanner? Is that a member one, or is that a...
Yeah, Scanner Radio. It's basically gets the open police frequencies.
Yeah, so it's not telemetry data, but it is, the frequencies that they use on radio. So we've used it sometimes when they were waiting for the pad to clear, or if there's people walking on the beach. Again, it's not telemetry for the rocket. But other than that, yeah, we don't have any access to SpaceX's telemetry that they're getting or receiving from Starship.
Yeah, I remember in the past we actually did have open communications. You could listen to some of the crane operators. I think Lab was able to go down and record some of that, and then put the feed from what was timed up, and so you can basically see a crane operator saying something, and as it's going lower, 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 okay, just a little bit more, and there you go. Pretty much that was what you could hear. It was kind of entertaining to hear construction going on, but it was open frequencies, unencrypted or anything like that, and so that's completely legal to listen in. To interfere with it would be a problem, but that's not something we were doing or anybody else that we know does. But yeah, that's something we're still looking into. Every once in a while, that'd be fun to get that kind of stuff. I've got a question here from Michael McKenzie. He asks, if CH4 was not loaded, why was the condenser, or was it recondenser working? And so the reason why is you basically still have the nitrogen coming out and super chilling that. And on the left-hand side, we have the LOX, which I think that was basically going to the LOX tank as well. And that one was working, and it still actually is working at this moment. You can see lots of venting coming off on the left-hand side of Nurdle. That's the recondenser working on the opposite direction. So when it goes in, they super chill the LOX, and they can also do the same thing with for nitrogen. And they use, for both of those, nitrogen. And it does a system called gas liquefaction, or not gas liquefaction, opposite that. It's a process goes from liquid to gas, which basically that state change takes energy, and that energy is in the form of heat. So it basically is going through the system, it's warming up a little bit, but it wants to go to the gaseous state because it's going from a compressed state to an uncompressed state, and it wants to expand, and that expansion takes heat to also expand and also turn into the gas that it wants to be. And so you basically are pulling that liquid nitrogen or liquid oxygen through the system. On the left-hand side, it's the LOX, and the right-hand side is the methane, but you can also supplement with that with nitrogen, and you basically super chill it. And that way you can put it in the vehicle. It's stronger at colder temperatures. And then you basically do the same process on the way back out. That's part of the reclamation process for the methane. That's why we no longer see the flare stack working, for instance. So it's a pretty complicated system, but it's got a lot of physics behind it, and that's to the best of my ability on how I understand it working. So I think that answers your question, and that's the last question I think for the night. Is there any other outstanding stuff that we needed to go through, guys?
I don't believe so.
Join, subscribe, like the video, like the channel.
Oh, yep. There's
All of
actually a couple of people to thank. Greg Hutch donated $20. I saw one other donation in here. Need to get to. Oh, I already did get to that one. So yeah, thank you, Greg. And I also have some other thank yous here I'll like to go through. So of course, I'd like to thank all of our mods here who've basically dedicated their time and efforts to keeping chat nice and clean and smoothing correctly. So we've got Adam Noon, Oracle, Jamie Valks, Rusty Buckets, Chef Daddy, Levi, Liverpool Led, Michael McKenzie, MVN, Nick Feisler, Scotty, Stumpy, Stumpley, that's his new nickname apparently, Art Zeus, Commander Data, Daniel R, Lewis, Procky, T Blano, The Danks, Thomas E01, Rowan, Neil Matic, Psychonaut421, Racer X, Zen Dragons, and then I also like to thank our commentators here today, which is Falcon and Jeff, also known as Calico. Thank you both for joining me this evening and being able to help out with the commentary and giving information that what you know and spreading that around and helping out the Nerdle community grow, because we all love Starship and SpaceX and what they're doing here. So thank you so much for your assistance today.
Very
No
welcome.
problem. It was a pleasure.
And then the last bit of thank yous here is just to some sponsors we have. And we have our sponsors of Sapphire Condominiums, Isabella Grand Beach Resort, Pearl South Beach Pearl South Padre, and they're the finest accommodations you can find on South Padre Island. So if you want to take a visit to see SN8 Hop or other fun adventures, they're good places to go. And the wonderful city of South Padre Island for their extended support for Lab Padre. And then we have Orbital Media Networks and In It Weather. And then we can't forget Stumpy01 and Crow Guy. Thanks for all their support and all of the other supporters out there. And I'd like to ask, of course, the biggest one, Lab himself. Without him, none of this would be here. So put a thank you in to everyone down in the comments, or in the just a thank you in YouTube chat to all the people who've put their efforts into making the stream available, and the commentary and everything else we've done today. So thank you guys again, and wish you all a good night.
Have a good one.
See you guys later.